Inside the sealed UN chamber, the Southern delegate finished speaking. The phrase hung in the air, a regional idiom few outside the region understood. He had just said 4 words that meant one thing literally, and something else entirely to anyone who knew the dialect.
That wasn't a demand. He's offering conditional withdrawal.
Catherine pressed the mic button and drew breath to interject. The open channel carried the click.
He'll handle the nuance, dear. Just translate, not interpret.
The booth audio cut. Her correction swallowed. Catherine's face went still. Frank leaned back, gesturing dismissively toward the delegations. She gave the literal words. No concession. No nuance. Just a demand. The Southern delegate stared back, confused. The Northern delegation rose from their chairs.
They think he's occupying territory forever. He offered to go. This summit just died.
Delegates from both sides pushed back their chairs and walked out. The Southern delegate looked back once, bewildered. The single phrase that could have saved the summit had been buried under a condescending "just translate." For 12 years, civil war had torn this region apart. Villages burned, families scattered, a generation lost to hatred. This summit was the first face-to-face negotiation in 5 years. Failure meant more than a stalled ceasefire. It meant another decade of bloodshed. Catherine was the only UN interpreter who spoke both principal dialects of the warring sides. She had been chosen specifically for her cultural knowledge.
I heard it immediately. The idiom for withdrawal under terms, it doesn't exist in French or English. Only in the language of my grandmother.
No one else in that chamber could have caught the misdirection. The Paris-trained mediator, the Brussels-briefed aides. They heard surrender demands where there had been an offer. The cost of her silence now hung in the air. A region's hope crushed by a single cultural arrogance. The world was watching. Cameras in the gallery, live feeds to every capital. And nobody knew what had just been lost. The summit was over by lunch. The first explanation the public would hear would not be hers. The chamber emptied. Catherine sat motionless in her booth, headphones slack around her neck.
He called me dear and killed a peace deal. 23 years of learning, silenced by one man's ego. If I go public now, I'll be labeled a disgruntled interpreter. Career suicide. But the grandmothers who taught me that idiom, they lost their sons. Silence isn't neutral.
On her screen, Frank's press statement was already live. The African delegations are not yet ready for peace.
He's blaming them for a mistake he made. They offered withdrawal, and he turned it into a demand. Every minute that lie stands, a chance of ceasefire dies. I am the only one who can kill it. If I speak, I lose my job. If I stay quiet, I lose my soul.
She reached for her jacket. Her 3 words, the ones that would end a war, still unspoken.
Protocol won't bury this. I'll correct it, publicly, and let the chips fall where they fall.
Catherine left her office and walked toward the main lobby. Her lanyard swung with each step. A mounted monitor showed Frank at the press podium, his words scrolling beneath. The African delegations are not yet ready for peace.
That is a lie, and he said it with my voice.
Staff in the hallway made way without meeting her eyes. A few glanced down at their phones. The lobby entrance opened before her. The press scrum was still thick, cameras aimed at an empty podium. She stopped at the threshold, one hand finding the credentials on her chest.
If I say it here, every newsroom will run it. If I fail, I'll be fired before midnight.
She stepped into the lobby. The sound of camera shutters from the press pool rippled through the marble hall. A French reporter turned, microphone in hand, and saw her. Recognition flickered.
3 words. That's all it takes.
Mademoiselle, your opinion? You were in the booth. What did you hear?
The lobby fell silent. Every camera turned toward the young interpreter. Catherine took the microphone. Her hand was steady, but inside her heart slammed against her ribs like a fist.
Just say the words. Open your mouth and say them.
But when she lifted her eyes, she saw Frank on the monitor, still at the press podium, arms folded, lips curled in that same dismissive smirk.
He'll dismantle me. A public correction will be framed as insubordination.
The microphone in her hand felt like a stone. The silence in the marble hall stretched into something unbearable. No one breathed.
Mademoiselle, please.
Catherine lowered the mic. She shook her head once, her throat sealed shut, and turned toward the exit.
Coward. You had one job, and you just let a war keep burning.
Catherine pushed through a side door into a service hallway. Behind her, the press scrum roared back to life. The text from the UN protocol office read, "Your services are no longer required for the day. Please vacate the premises immediately."
Not fired, just sent away for the day. But every hour that lie survives, another village burns.
A wall-mounted television in the hallway replayed Frank's press conference. The chyron scrolled, "African delegations unwilling to negotiate."
The African delegations are not yet ready for peace. We will have to reevaluate the international approach.
He's rewriting history in real time, and the world is swallowing it whole.
In the main lobby, journalists nodded and typed furiously. The narrative was set. No one called the translator's booth.
They'll never believe a junior interpreter over a senior diplomat, but I cannot live with the silence.
She leaned her forehead against the cool marble pillar, the weight of a region pressed down.
There has to be a way. There has to be.
Catherine pushed off the pillar and walked back toward the main lobby. The sound of journalists still filed the air. She stepped into the lobby again, head down, moving through the scrum like a ghost. No one looked up.
Mademoiselle, attendez. You were in the booth. Your opinion? What did you truly hear?
The lobby fell silent. Every camera turned. Catherine froze, her back still to them. Camille stepped closer, her microphone trembling. "Mademoiselle, the world is listening."
If I turn around, the lie dies tonight. If I walk away, it lives forever.
She turned, slowly. Her heels clicked on the marble twice, then silence.
3 words. Just 3 words.
She walked to the microphone stand. No one breathed. The silence was total. She wrapped her fingers around the mic. Her mouth opened. The words were there, but nothing came out yet. The silence was a physical weight. She could hear her own pulse thudding in her ears.
Speak. Just speak. The words are your weapon.
Through the plate glass, Frank had stopped mid-stride, his face draining of color.
He knows what I am about to say. He knows, and he cannot stop it.
The journalists stood frozen, fingers hovering over keyboards. Not a single shutter clicked.
23 years. Every prayer, every lesson, every mile of running, it all led here.
She looked straight into the camera lens. The feed was live to 17 capitals.
For my grandmother, for the children who never learned to read, for the truth.
She pulled a breath that lifted her shoulders. The whole lobby heard it, and then, into the dead air, she spoke, her voice firm, each syllable a nail in Frank's lie. She spoke 3 words in the southern dialect, the very idiom her grandmother used when negotiating village land disputes. Withdrawal under terms. Without pause, she translated into French, then into English, her voice unwavering.
He misunderstood withdrawal.
A heartbeat of silence. Then the lobby erupted with camera shutters and frantic shouting. Through the glass, Frank's face drained to ash. The monitor behind him still replayed his own frozen sneer.
Done. No protocol officer can stuff this back into silence.
A journalist yelled, "What does that mean?" But Camille had already turned, shouting over the noise.
She says the delegate was offering withdrawal. He wasn't making a demand. He was offering terms.
The lobby monitor flickered. The chyron now read, "Translator, Southern delegate offered withdrawal, not occupation." Catherine lowered the microphone. Her 3 words were already burning through newsrooms on 4 continents. Within minutes, the clip was on every major network. Headlines flipped faster than fingers could type. In a Geneva hotel suite, a young Southern delegation aide stared at his tablet. The translator's voice filled the room. He rushed to his principal, who had been packing to return home in disgrace. "Sir, you need to see this, now." The Southern delegate took the tablet. He watched Catherine's lips form the 3 words he'd spoken that morning. His hand began to shake. We have seen the video. Our words were misunderstood. Within minutes, the tweet had 80,000 retweets. The comment section exploded in 3 languages. Journalists who had already filed their stories started rewriting leads mid-broadcast. The narrative had cracked. Catherine, still standing in the lobby, stared at her phone as the notification count climbed. A single tear traced her cheek. The Northern delegation's phones, however, remained silent. The world watched their official handle, waiting. By evening, the pressure was unbearable. The next move was theirs, and they knew it. 2 floors above, the Northern delegation's envoy watched the same clip on his tablet. He replayed the 3 words twice. The aide beside him gestured at the screen, then at the silent phone on the desk. Time was running out. The envoy picked up the phone and dialed his capital. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. At 6:21 p.m., the Northern delegation's official handle posted a statement. "We have seen the translator's correction. We recognize it as an offer of withdrawal. Talks resume immediately, no preconditions." The Southern delegation retweeted it immediately. Their response was 1 word in the regional dialect. Then come, Catherine, still at the edge of the press scrum, saw the chyron change on the lobby monitor. Her hand flew to her mouth. 12 years of war. 3 words. And now, a flicker of light she had not allowed herself to hope for. The journalists erupted into a second wave of shouting. Talks resumed. Unprecedented. Who is this translator? Within 20 minutes of her correction, the deadlock was broken. The path to a ceasefire was open. The world turned the page. Within 9 days, the Geneva chamber filled again. This time, no misunderstanding. A ceasefire document lay on the polished table. 12 years of war waited on a signature. The Southern delegates signed first. The Northern delegate followed. Then they shook hands, and the room rose. Catherine watched from a back hallway monitor, alone. She pressed her palm to her chest, breathing at last. The next morning, every newspaper carried her image. Ceasefire signed. After 12 years, translator's 3 words, break deadlock. She touched the newsprint, tracing the dialect words. They looked smaller now. Asked what changed, the Southern delegate pointed at the monitor showing Catherine's face. The Northern delegate added, she did not translate, she mediated. That is new. Frank's name vanished from the coverage. His office door remained shut, dust gathering on the nameplate. That evening, Catherine read a new message. Your presence is requested at the Secretary General's office tomorrow at 9. 3 months of negotiations accelerated. The linguistic concession Catherine exposed became the bridge no mediator could build. The peace treaty was signed on a Tuesday. Camera flashes filled the ornate hall, capturing history for every front page.
It's over. The war that took everything. It's over.
After the ceremony, delegates walked past her without recognition. She was still just the interpreter, invisible in plain sight. A junior aide offered her a seat in the back row of the reception. She sat alone, sipping water, the roar of celebration muffled through the doors. The next morning's headlines screamed, peace. But the name beneath the largest photo was Frank's, his final effort to reclaim credit.
He's still trying to own a piece he nearly destroyed.
She folded the paper and set it aside. The lies still clung, but the dead were not coming back.
23 years since I crossed into Europe, and the language that saved me just saved them.
That night, a formal letter arrived on UN letterhead. Catherine, your language is needed again. The Secretary General awaits in New York. The UN internal review cited gross negligence in cultural mediation. Frank's retirement was accepted within the week. He packed his office on a Thursday. No colleague stopped to help. The cardboard box swallowed a career. Catherine walked past his open door, the bare desk, the naked wall, a monument to a lie that had cost 12 years of blood.
So that's how it ends for a man who trusted his own voice over a translator's. A cardboard box and silence.
Protocol offered Catherine a standard contract renewal. Same booth, same grade, same invisibility. The UN's machinery celebrated the peace, but the woman who made it possible was still classified as a contractor.
They'll keep me in the booth forever, a living footnote to their own greatness.
In New York, the Secretary General had summoned her, but protocol delayed everything. Days passed in waiting. Ambassadors breezed past security, while her name remained missing from the daily appointment list.
The world handed them a path to peace, and they still can't find my name on a schedule. Fine, I'll wait.
On the fourth morning of waiting, Catherine's name finally appeared on the security list. The heavy door swung open.
Catherine, please sit. Your 3 words have reached every corner of the earth.
The Secretary General just recited my grandmother's idiom. Never thought I'd hear that in this building.
What you did was not translation. It was cultural mediation of the highest order. The UN has no framework for it.
He slid a folder across the polished desk. On the cover, Office of Linguistic Mediation, Draft Charter.
I am asking you to build this office. 17 native speaker interpreters, full diplomatic rank. You lead it.
17 voices. Not one man in a booth. An institution.
Her fingers rested on the folder, but didn't open it. The weight of the choice pressed down.
Think carefully. This would change how the UN speaks, but it will also consume your life.
This is more than I ever dared ask for, and it terrifies me.
Catherine opened the folder. The charter inside was skeletal, a single page waiting for flesh.
I accept, but not on these terms. This office must be built from the ground up, by people who know what it means to be silenced in a room full of power.
What did you have in mind, Catherine?
She walked to the whiteboard and uncapped a marker.
17 interpreters, each a native speaker of a conflict language. Not just translators, mediators. They sit at the negotiating table, not in a booth. When an idiom is misunderstood, they stop the session right then.
That changes the entire structure of diplomatic communication.
Full diplomatic rank. Same immunity as any envoy. Otherwise, we'll be ignored again.
You'll have it. The entire office will carry diplomatic credentials.
That afternoon, the Secretary General himself placed a polished nameplate on an empty desk in a sunlit corner office. It read, Catherine, Director, Office of Linguistic Mediation. Over the following months, Catherine called the people she'd been silently tracking for years. 17 names. A Somali linguist, a Kurdish mediator, a Rohingya poet, each scarred by war. One by one, they arrived in Geneva, carrying worn suitcases and silent histories. She handed each a diplomatic passport and a chair at the table. Not a booth, a chair. Maps of conflict zones covered the walls. The murmur of languages the UN had never heard filled the air.
Every one of them was silenced once. Now they sit where the decisions are made.
Alone in the office, Catherine picked up the framed photograph from her bag. The image was old, black and white. A teenage girl on a detention center bench, clutching a French textbook.
23 years. And I still carry that girl with me.
She slid the photo back into her bag and straightened her blazer. Tomorrow, 17 voices would change how the world spoke. What the world didn't know, what even the Secretary General hadn't asked, was why the idiom meant so much to her. Catherine was 15 when the war reached her village. The same war, the same 2 sides, the same language. She was evacuated alone to a Belgian detention center. No family, no school, just a number and a cold bench. She taught herself French from a donated textbook. Every night, she recited verb conjugations until her lips went numb.
If I can speak their language, I can make them see me. I can be more than a refugee.
The idiom she used at the press mic was the same one her grandmother used to settle village disputes before the war tore her family apart. When she corrected Frank, she was correcting the very misunderstanding that had once cost her own home. The language of her exile became the language of peace for millions. She had been translating not just words, but the unspoken grief of a war she had survived. 23 years after crossing into Europe with nothing, she had built an office that gave voice to the silenced. In the silence of her office, Catherine sometimes still felt the cold metal of that detention center bench.
One day, I will speak for those who have no voice. I will stop wars with words.
In a donated notebook, she wrote, "Peace, not just a word, an action.
I remember writing that. My hand shook from hunger, but the letters came out steady.
That room is empty now, but the vow born there fills an office of 17 voices. Each interpreter had been silenced somewhere. A Kurdish mountain, a Rohingya camp, a Somali checkpoint. She gave them not just credentials, but a mandate. Stop the session when a word is misunderstood. The same idiom that had saved her grandmother's village negotiations now carried the weight of a peace treaty.
23 years, and I still carry the bench, the book, the grandmother. Now they sit with me at the table.
From a detention center bench to a director's chair, Catherine had turned exile into a language that spoke for millions. The day the Linguistic Mediation Office received its first diplomatic credentials, Catherine stood at the UN podium in a packed hall. Behind her, a large screen displayed the date, the 15th March. No one in the room knew why her hand trembled as she touched the paper. 23 years earlier, on that exact date, a 15-year-old girl had stepped off a truck in Brussels, clutching a French textbook and a single word in her throat.
The 15th of March. The day I stopped running and started speaking.
The credentials she presented that day gave 17 interpreters the right to sit at any negotiating table on Earth. But for Catherine, it was also a date that stitched her past to her purpose.
I crossed into Europe with nothing but a language. Today, I handed that language back to the world.
As she stepped back from the podium, the hall rose in applause, but Catherine heard only the echo of a quiet vow made on a cold Belgian bench. The 15th March had once marked the beginning of her exile. Now it marked the day peace had a permanent voice. The Linguistic Mediation Office thrived. Its interpreters sat at nearly every major peace negotiation in the following years. A brass plaque was mounted in the UN lobby, bearing the 3 dialect words and their English translation. He misunderstood withdrawal. In the villages once divided by war, children painted the same words on signs and hung them over rebuilt doorways. In a classroom near the former front line, a teacher wrote the idiom on a chalkboard and asked the children to say it aloud. Catherine walked through her office, passing maps and screens, hearing a dozen languages spoken with diplomatic weight. She paused by a window, looking out at the Geneva skyline, a quiet smile settling on her face. The plaque became a pilgrimage site for mediators. They touched the words as if they held the secret to ending other wars. A photograph of a girl with the poster appeared in a humanitarian report, captioned, "The 3 words that gave us back our future." In the region, a new generation grew up learning that a single misunderstood word can kill, but a corrected one can heal. Catherine touched the lanyard around her neck, the UN credentials warm from her skin. Peace had a voice now. It would not be silenced again. Later, alone in her office, Catherine opened a drawer and took out a worn newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Ceasefire signed after 12 years. Beside it, the old photo of a girl on a detention bench."
2 dates, 1 life. The girl who had nothing now holds the keys to peace.
She placed them side by side on the desk.
That girl kept her word. She found a way to speak, and they listened.
Outside, the Geneva lights flickered on, but she barely noticed the skyline.
Peace isn't a treaty. It's a language, and I've made sure it won't be misheard again.
She touched the credentials around her neck, then rose and walked to the window.
23 years. And I am finally home.
A soft smile settled on her face. In the city below, the bells of a peace that would last began to ring.